Hey, what's up you guys? It's Dorothy and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Comment down below what you want to see in the future. Click that subscribe button and turn on my post notifications. That way you get notified every time we go into a new chapter of whatever book we are reading. And in today's video, I'm super excited. I'm so sorry. We are on the last chapter of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. It has been a long journey with this, but we are finally on the last chapter and we will be able to start book 2 soon, and I'm super excited about it. So let's get right into this. This video may contain sensitive topics and foul language. If you do not wish to continue, please click off the video now. You have been warned. Here we go. Chapter 48. The car jerked as Pip pulled roughly onto the curb. She stepped onto the darkened street and up to the front door. She knocked. The wind chimes beside it were swaying, the evening breeze chiming high and insistent. The front door opened and Becca's face appeared in the crack. She looked at Pip and pulled it fully open. "Oh, hi, Pippa," she said. "Hi, Becca. I came to see if you were okay after last night. I saw you in the car and—" "Yeah," she nodded. "The detective told us it was you that found out about Mr. Ward and what he'd done." "Yeah, I'm sorry." "Do you want to come in?" Becca asked, stepping back to clear the threshold. "Thanks." Pip walked past her and into the hallway she and Ravi had broken in 2 weeks ago. Becca smiled and gestured her through into the robin egg blue kitchen. "Would you like tea?" "Oh, no, thanks." "Sure, I was just making some for myself." "Okay, then. Black, please, thanks." Pip took a seat at the kitchen table, her back straight, knees rigid, and watched as Becca grabbed 2 flowery mugs from a cupboard, dropped in the tea bags, and poured from the kettle. "Excuse me," Becca said. "I just need to get a tissue." As she left the room, Pip's pocket buzzed and chimed. It was a message from Ravi. "Yo, Sarge, where are you?" She flicked her phone to silent and zipped it back into her coat. Becca re-entered the room, tucking a tissue into her sleeve. She brought over the teas and put Pip's down in front of her. "Thank you," Pip said, taking a sip. She was glad for it now. Something to do with her shaking hands. The black cat came in, strutting over with his tail up, rubbing his head into Pippa's ankles until Becca shooed him away. "How are your parents doing?" Pip asked. "Not great," Becca said. "After we confirmed she wasn't Andy, my mom booked herself into rehab for emotional trauma, and my dad wants to sue everyone." "Do they know who the girl is yet?" Pip said into the rim of the mug. "Yeah, they called my dad this morning. She was on the missing persons register. Isla Jordan, 23, from New Haven. They said she has a learning disability and a mental age of 12 years old. She came from an abusive home and had a history of running away and possession of drugs." Becca fiddled with her short hair. "They said she was very confused. She lived like that for so long, being Andy, because it's what pleased Mr. Ward. She actually believes that she's a girl called Andy Bell from Fairview." Pip took a large gulp. Her mouth felt dry and there was an awful tremor in her throat, echoing back her doubled heartbeat. She raised the mug and finished off the tea. "She did look like her," Pip finally said. "I thought she was Andy for a few seconds, and I saw in your parents' faces the hope that maybe it would have been Andy after all, that me and the police could be wrong. But you already knew, didn't you?" Becca put her mug down and stared at her. "Your face wasn't like theirs, Becca. You looked confused. You looked scared. You knew for sure it couldn't be your sister because you killed her, didn't you?" Becca didn't move. The cat jumped on the table beside her, and still she didn't move. "In March of 2014, Pip said, you went to a calamity party with your friend Jess Walker, and while you were there, something happened to you. You don't remember, but you woke up and you knew something felt wrong. You asked Jess to go and get the morning after pill with you, and when she asked who you'd slept with, you didn't tell her. It wasn't as Jess presumed because you were embarrassed. It's because you didn't know. You didn't know what had happened or who had anterograde amnesia because someone slipped roofies into your drink and then assaulted you." Becca just sat there inhumanely, still like a small fleshed-out mannequin, too scared to move, and then she started to cry, the muscles twitching in her chin. Pip's gut congealed as she looked into Becca's eyes, and she saw the truth there, because the truth was no victory here. It was just as sad and confusing. "I can't imagine how horrible and lonely it was for you," Pip said, feeling unsteady, not being able to remember, but just knowing that something bad had happened. "You must have felt like no one could help you. You did nothing wrong and you had nothing to be ashamed of, but I don't think you felt that way at first. And you ended up in the hospital. And then what happened? Did you decide to find out what happened to you? Who was responsible?" Becca's nod was almost imperceptible. "I think you realized someone had drugged you, so Is that where you started looking? Started asking around about who bought drugs at Calamities and who from? And the questions led back to your own sister. Becca, what happened on Friday, April 18th? What happened when Andy walked back from Mr. Ward's house? All I'd found out was someone bought weed and ecstasy off of her once, Becca said, looking down at the and catching her tears in her hands. So when she went out and left me alone, I looked in her room. I found the place where she hid her other phone and the drugs. I looked through the phone, and all the contacts were saved with just one letter names. But I read through some of the messages, and I found the person who bought Rohypnol from her. She used his name in one of her texts. Max Hastings, said Pip. And I thought, she cried, I thought that once I knew, we would be able to fix everything and put it right. And I thought that when Andy got home, I'd tell her, and she'd let me cry on her and tell me she was so sorry and that me and her were going to set this right and make him pay. All I wanted was my big sister and the freedom of finally telling someone. Pip wiped her eyes, feeling shaky and drained. And then Andy came home, Becca said, with a head injury. No, I didn't know that at the time, she said. I didn't see anything. She was just here in the kitchen, and I couldn't wait any longer. I had to tell her. And Becca's voice broke. When I did, she just looked at me and said she didn't care. I tried to explain, and she wouldn't listen. She just said I wasn't allowed to tell anyone or I'd get her in trouble. She tried to leave the room and I blocked her. Then she said I should be grateful that someone had actually wanted me because I was just a fat, ugly version of her, and she tried to push me out of the way. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe she could be so cruel. I pushed her back and tried to explain again, and we were both shouting and shoving, and then it was so fast, and he fell back onto the floor. I didn't think I pushed her that hard. Her eyes were closed, and then she was being sick. It was all over her face and in her hair, and Becca sobbed. Then her mouth was full, and she was coughing and choking on it, and I just froze. I don't know why. I was just so angry at her. When I look back now, I don't know whether or not I made any decision. I don't remember thinking anything at all. I just remember I just didn't move. I must have known she was dying, and I stood there and did nothing. Becca shifted her gaze then to a place in the kitchen tiles by the door where it must have happened, and then she went still, and I realized what I'd done. I panicked, and I tried to clear her mouth, but she was already dead. I wanted to take it back so badly. I've wanted to every day since, but it was too late. Only then did I see the blood in her hair and thought I must have hurt her. For 5 years, I've thought that. I didn't know until 2 days ago that Andy had injured her head before with Mr. Ward. That must have been why she lost consciousness and why she was sick. Doesn't matter, though. I was still the one who let her choke to death. I watched her die and did nothing. And because I thought it was me that hurt her head and there were scratches on her arm for me, signs of a struggle, I knew everyone, even my parents, would think I meant to kill her because Andy was always so much better than me. My parents even loved her more. You put her body in the trunk of her car, Pip said, leaning forward, and told her to hold her head because it was too heavy. The car was in the garage and I dragged her inside. I didn't know how I find the strength to do it. It's all a blur now. I cleaned everything up. I watched enough documentaries. I knew which type of bleach you have to use. Then you left the house just before 10:40 p.m., Pip said. It was you the security camera picked up driving Andy's car up Main Street, and you took her. I think you took her to that old farmhouse on Sycamore Road, the one you're writing an article about because you didn't want the neighbors to buy it and restore it, and you buried her there. She's not buried, Becca sniffled. She's in the septic tank. Pip nodded, her fuzzy head grappling in Andy's final fate. Then you dumped her car and you walked home. Why did you leave it on Monroe? When I looked through her second phone, I saw that there was where her dealer lived. I thought if I left the car there, the police would make the connection and he'd be the main suspect. What must you have thought when suddenly Sal was the guilty one and it was all over? Becca shrugged. I don't know. I thought maybe it was some kind of sign that I'd been forgiven, though I'd never forgiven myself. And then Pip said, 5 years later, I start investigating. You got my number from Stanley's phone, and when I interviewed him, he told me some kid was doing a project thinking Sal was innocent. I panicked. I thought that if you proved his innocence, I'd need to find another suspect. I'd kept Andy's burner phone, and I knew she was having a secret relationship. There were texts to a contact named E about meeting up at this place, the Ivy House Inn. So I went there to see if I could find out who this man was. I didn't get anywhere. The old woman who owned it was very confused. Then weeks later, I saw you hanging around the station parking lot, and I knew that's where Andy's dealer worked. I watched you, and as I followed him, I followed you. I saw you go to his house with Sal's brother. I just wanted to make you stop. That's when you first texted me, Pip said, but I didn't stop. And when I came to talk to you at your office, you must have thought I was close to figuring out it was you, talking about the burner phone at Max Hastings, so you killed my dog and made me destroy all my research. I'm so sorry. She looked down. I didn't mean for your dog to die. I let him go. I really did. But it was dark. He must have gotten confused and fallen in the river. Pip's breath caught, but accident or not, wouldn't bring Barney back. I loved him so much, Pip said, feeling dizzy, unjoining from herself. But I won't forgive you. But I want to forgive you. That's why I came here, Becca. I have worked all of this out. The police won't be far behind me now that they've responded to the case. Reopen the case, and Mr. Ward's story starts to poke holes in yours. She spoke fast, slurring her tongue, tripping over the words. It's not right what you did, Becca, letting her die, but I know you know that. It's not fair what happened to you. You didn't ask for any of this, but the law lacks compassion. I came to warn you. You need to leave, get out of the country, and find a life for yourself somewhere, because they will be coming for you soon. Pip looked at her. Becca must have been talking, but suddenly all the sound in the world disappeared, just the buzz of the beetle's wings trapped inside her head. The table was rippling between them, and Pip's eyelids felt unnaturally heavy, dragging down and down. And she stuttered. The world dimmed. The only bright thing was the empty mug in front of her, wavering, its colors dripping up into the air. You put something, my drink. There were a few of Max's pills left in Andy's hiding place. I kept them. Becca's voice came to Pip, loud and garnished and shrieking echo, switching from ear to ear. I'm going to leave off right there. This is going to be 2 parts just because it's such a long chapter. I will see you guys in part 2 of chapter 48. Bye.